All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're here for a budget work session, invocation on this one. So anyway, this is, I guess you'd kind of say, a special call meeting to kind of look over the budget one final time before third reading. We've already had the public hearing. That concerns me a little bit, but we're not with the intentions of trying to change anything or slide anything under, so I just wanted to make sure that anybody that's listening, department heads, whatever, it's not intentional to, for us to have it, well, it is intentional to have it after the public hearing, but there's just some discussion this morning. So with that being said, general operating budget, finance staff.
Mr. Chair, it
Yes.
sounds like you probably heard the same comments I have, and that is I was willing to have this meeting. I'm still willing to have this meeting because I think the budget is one of the biggest decisions we'll make as a council. But we've had several months that we've had this budget in hand. We've had 2 readings and a public hearing, and so I think to say we're going to go line by line through the budget at this juncture is unfair to everybody, and so I'm still willing to go forward to meeting, but I think in future time frame, we need to do this much, much earlier in the budget process. And I say that with all due respect to council and blaming myself as well for not catching that earlier.
Yeah. And Mary, we're glad to have you zooming in. Thank you for being there. Just so everybody knows that you are
Thank you.
attached to the meeting, even though you're not in your chair. So if anybody's looking from the outside, Mary is taking advantage of technology to be available for conversation and input. All right, general operating budget, finance staff.
That being said, we're just here to answer any questions y'all might have in regards to what has been presented through the 2 readings and the public hearing and the 3 work sessions.
All right, any feedback on the general operating budget?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate council's indulgence, and in spite of some of the comments that have been made, if you look historically, the budget generally changes even on third reading, which is after we have had public comment. There have been amendments added to the budget
Certainly.
every year.
But not a line by line look through
And-
after 2
and,
readings and a public hearing.
and-
That's inappropriate.
Well, I'll challenge you then.
Challenge me.
Okay, if I ask you questions about this, you'll be able to answer those.
To the best of my ability, sir.
Have you already reviewed everything?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have voted 2 readings and a public hearing if I hadn't.
So, when I look at non-department contingency, and it's gone to 232,000. Can you explain that?
I'm sorry, you have to tell me where you're at first.
That's under expenditures, 2,200 non-department. And it's not my, maybe I should back up. It's not my intent to put you on the spot. But if you said the correct thing in that I think we should have already gone through more
Absolutely.
detail before now.
That's my contention.
And we have had opportunities to do that, and we could have either gone ahead without doing anything, which I think was the wrong thing to do, or we could address it at this time. You know, you can't undo past errors at this point, but you can not continue to make those errors.
That is correct.
So I have spent the afternoon, better part of the afternoon, talking with our staff, and I've gotten good answers on almost every question that I had.
Okay.
I think there's several things that do need to be addressed this evening. I do have a concern about the 1.5% cost of living to all of our departments except for the sheriff's department, which is a 2.5%. And I would propose that we have a 2% cost of living for all of our employees. There was an adjustment made to the sheriff's department, and Debbie, I had asked you to provide that information previously, that made those positions competitive with surrounding counties, and that has already been done. And there was no discussion at that time about okay, we're gonna continue this with another cycle or another cycle. And so that supposedly made that department well. And now we're talking going forward, we've got all the departments get 1.5 except for the sheriff. I don't agree with that. I think all departments ought to get 2%. I've already talked to our finance people. It's basically a wash. It's a flat line. If everybody gets 2%, it's not affecting the budget. I do think the cost of living, if everybody buys groceries where I buy groceries, the cost of living is going up. Everything's going up. There's an inflation factor now. I think our employees did not get a raise last year, cost of living. I think they should, and I don't think we should favor one department over another. So my proposal tonight, one of my biggest proposals tonight, is that we change from the 1.5 and 2.5 to a flat 2% increase for all of our departments.
And my response to that would be, first off, that the reason that they had to get a raise is because there was such a hiring crisis in law enforcement.
I understand.
And that continues to be a hiring crisis. I travel the state, deal with law enforcement all across the state, and there continues to be a hiring crisis. The other issue that I would take with that is while most county employees are scheduled for 37.5 hours per week, the sheriff's office schedules 42 hours a week. And so they work on an 84-hour every 2-week pay period. They also are the only arm of the county government that works 24/7, 365, including holidays and all of those things. And so if we don't continue and maintain that we keep our law enforcement pay competitive, we're just going to find ourselves right back in the same cycle all over again where we're having to do this massive pay raise. And so my contention is let's take care of public safety. We've got a great sheriff's office. We've got great public safety throughout this county, fire, rescue, EMS, and so let's not step back now. And so my contention would be the reason you make a difference is because there is a difference.
And I don't disagree that we have a wonderful department, that we have wonderful employees, and that adjustment was made over the last couple of years. I just don't think we continue to adjust that singular department above all others.
I don't think that they're the only ones that's behind the pay scale.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. Now, if we want to adjust the whole pay scale, that's a whole different conversation that I think needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
But to come in here 2 readings in a public hearing and say, oh, I changed my mind, I don't want to do this, I just think that's wrong on its face.
Well, that's why we have 3 readings
It is.
instead of doing it all in one night so that you have an opportunity to
But
do
the-
some more in-depth study and you don't do it on one reading and it's not finalized until we have the 3rd reading.
But Mr. Hipp, hadn't you had this budget for months?
Same time you got it.
Okay, and I don't have a problem with this budget now. I'm prepared to vote for it and move forward.
But, Mr. Jones, we've already got amendments.
I don't know who Mr.
proposed-
Jones is.
I mean, excuse me, Johnson. We've got amendments already being proposed for 3rd reading.
I understand that.
By staff,
I understand
and
that.
that hadn't been the case.
I understand.
That's why we have 3rd reading, and like I said, I'll be the first one to tell you that I think I should have forced more in-depth look at this budget when I was part of the Finance Committee the first time around.
Absolutely.
And I also think as chairman of the Finance Committee, should have done a more in-depth drill down into this
The
budget.
truth is, you don't know how much research I've done on this budget, so for you
But
to make that
never brought
insinuation's
that-
wrong.
You never brought that before the committee,
That we should go through it line by line?
that we should go through it department by department and address, not line by line.
I love it
but
that you're gonna
address-
blame me for your problem.
I'm not blaming you. I told you, it's
Okay.
I accept my issue with this, but I'm not the only one that's sitting here tonight, and that's why you have 3 readings.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
anything can change at any time.
No question.
You can add amendments. So
No
right
question.
now, it's my proposal that the budget as presented, I have a problem with the way the salaries, we haven't even given our staff the form in which that 1.5% is gonna be completed.
I don't disagree with that aspect.
So I'm just, I think we got several things, but that's one of my biggest issues is that, and it has nothing to do with the quality of our law enforcement. We got great law enforcement here tonight. We got law enforcement at home. I support law enforcement. I've never supported defunding law enforcement. But at some point, we have to treat all of our employees fairly.
I don't disagree with that. I want to do more and more for the county employees. In a pay study, I think, or some kind of thing, I was told by one of the other councilmen, we have motor grader operators making $28,000 a year with the county, where they can go make $60,000 probably with a private agency. And so, do we need some fixes in that? Yes. Will I support that? 100%. But
Have you already proposed that for this budget?
I have not. Have you,
You
sir?
had this budget, could you have done that?
I certainly could have.
And you did not.
I did not.
Okay.
Have you proposed your change up until now?
I'm just comparing the fact that we both have had opportunities, and we could have taken action that we haven't.
Correct.
But to take no action because we have taken no action is not an excuse.
Understood, but please receive that as well as you give it.
I understand.
And our utility departments also are on call 24/7 that are underpaid. Our CDL drivers, our equipment operators during storms.
I'm not talking about on call, I'm talking about at work.
They work their shift and are on call at night,
That's correct.
just as
But the
officers.
rest of them are there.
Just as officers, they work their scheduled time and they're on call.
But the officers not only are on call, but there has to be somebody, Christmas morning, if you call a deputy, somebody's gonna show up.
That's their shift,
That's correct.
right? Just like
I'm just being, there's a difference between being on call and being at work,
well,
But then-
I'm on call 24/365.
as was I. There's a difference.
I can say that I agree with the overall 2%. And it was my mistake as well. I should have dug into it sooner.
Comments?
Can we balance the budget with 2% across the board?
Yes.
By using 2% for everyone, there is $57,000 that would not be allocated, right?
No, it's 1.5.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was 1.5. We did so many scenarios, I'm probably got them
Right here,
mixed up.
right here it is. This is the 2%.
If we did 1.5 overall, it would be 57,000. If we did 2%, we'd be short 2,000.
Short, 2,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's workers' comp and. you
But I
know,
mean, that's all the benefits in there too, so
We're
there could
doing
be a
a
little bit.
33%.
And we didn't give the regular county employees any raise last year?
No, sir.
I mean, we got to keep all of our county employees, not, I mean, sheriff's department.
No county employees got pay raise last year.
That's right.
The year before is when the sheriff's office.
Okay.
1920.
In
Okay, I got you.
current year,
I got
the
you.
current year right now, there
None.
were no increases.
Okay.
Budgeted at all.
Now, y'all know I'm pro-police all the time. I got people that I love dearly that's coming into the police, so y'all are on top of my list. But we got a lot of other employees that we want to keep as well. That's, and I'm afraid we're gonna be losing some.
Public hearing.
On the original adjustment, we were losing deputies to other counties, other offices. We were down 9 deputies, which was, I mean, we got 20 on the road assigned straight to the road. So that helped. But since then, Richland, Lexington, everybody else is up in their game. And I'm gonna tell you directly, the starting salary affects who puts in for the job, the applications. And if you don't get the applications, we still 4 deputies down right now that we're trying to fill. I don't know how many to jail, but the starting salary is what brings you applications in. It made a big difference when we did it, but since then, those other counties and other municipalities are rolling up, and if we don't keep up with it, we're gonna be right back in the same boat.
Wesley, what is our starting salary, Richland starting salary, and Lexington?
I'd have to go back and look at them. I think we're at 41.
We're starting to pay
And what is Richland and Lexington?
I'd have to go back and look at them. I know that right now Richland's probably around 43. I think they're going up. At this last one, I want to say some of them got 10% on this last year, and I do not know exact numbers. At this point, the bleeding stopped, but if we don't keep up with it, the bleeding will start again, because just like this younger generation goes for salary, and that makes a big difference.
That's across the board for all jobs, though.
Oh, I agree.
Unfortunately.
I agree.
I mean.
But in today's time,
Oh,
law
yeah.
enforcement is even
Oh,
more
I
difficult,
know.
because
I know.
who wants to go into this?
Who wants to go into
The
law
way things
enforcement?
are today.
I agree with you 100%.
I'm not disputing the challenges you guys face, I promise you. But we also, I thought, from what I'd been told, that we had gotten to the point that we were commensurate with the others, and then if we just maintained, then we'd be maintaining with the others.
Well-
And maybe we need to do another salary comparison, salary survey. That would probably be good across all of our jobs.
I would very much be in favor of that.
I think we ought to do a salary survey for law enforcement, for motor grader operators, for
Well, for
animal
all-
control, everybody.
every
We need to
position.
find out what our competition is, and that's what, other counties around us, contiguous to us, are our competition for good people.
Well,
And we
not
need to
for
have-
law enforcement, but I'm gonna tell you, as a whole, there's a lot of companies that came into Newberry County that are hiring at much higher salaries themselves. So, yes, you bring the industry in and you bring higher salaries, but it also makes you have to compete for those same people to work.
Lexington County starting salary for a deputy is $47,468.
In Richland,
I haven't looked Richland yet. I'll look that one up. I think the city of Lexington's it was over 50 before I left.
They, at one time, were the highest starting.
Yeah.
And the people that you get, your applicants pool definitely comes from what your starting salary is, I can assure you of that. And it is difficult to find good, credible applicants if you're not competitive with other agencies around you.
right. And I know, if you look at everything, you can't go by an industry in Newberry County that doesn't have a help wanted sign out there. You can't go by a restaurant in Newberry County that doesn't have a help wanted.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is a tremendous need for people to work, and I don't know where the people disappeared to, but anyway, I won't go into that. I just think that, I want to support you guys. I never, I would absolutely supported it when the adjustments were made.
One more thing that I'd like to say, during the COVID, when all the other county offices shut down, locked down, we continued to move on. We even supported all the other departments in this county. We fumigated courtrooms, offices. When anybody had a scare, our people were the ones that went in. It cost us, almost half of our staff were tested positive with COVID.
Right.
So, we went through it, and we were the ones that continued to work all the way through it with no change. Even the sex offenders had to be registered by the secretaries up front.
And I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, sir.
That's all. I was just gonna make sure that he didn't miss that portion of that our staff was the ones who fumigated the council chambers when you guys came on. Our staff's the one that does the courtrooms, the courthouse, the county offices, as well as maintains these posts that you see around, making sure people had their mask on, taking temperatures, and they're compensated for that with pay, but it was still overdue, extra hours, that they had to come in and provide those types of services.
Do they,
So,
are they paid by salary or are they paid hourly?
most of the ones that were doing the post were done hourly, but then there were
So
sometimes when I had to run it, I'm overtime exempt, so I don't get paid for that. But I had to bring in other employees and to sit back there and do that from time to time at Taylor's request, and they were paid for it.
They were,
So,
yeah, compensated, okay.
But it doesn't change the fact that I had to get them in here, being on call, get them in here and get them to do it. And, you don't always get volunteers for that type of stuff. So it's nice sometimes, to reward those employees for doing that type of stuff. And granted, we are very happy with any increase that we get. And we don't believe that we are better than anybody else. We just believe that through the pandemic, last year's pay raise was taken out of the budget, and we're falling behind, like Chief Boland said, with the salaries. We were brought up to a good place. We want to stay at that good place to keep good employees, and the more times that we get less pay raises or no pay raises, it just creates a bigger gap between us and these other agencies. So,
I appreciate that.
just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, is there any money coming from this federal money that could be used as
That was actually going to be my next suggestion.
as possibly a bonus type?
Well, that
Payment?
was one of the things I think I'd had a conversation with a couple of you about, was the possibility of doing the 1.5% and then taking some of that money, and actually, you can't use it as a salary, but you can use it as a,
Premium pay,
what's that?
premium pay.
Premium pay, up to $13 an hour per person.
Cap.
And again, we're going to have this money for 2 years. Out of the appreciation for everything that's been done, I was thinking that would be possibly an alternative for utilization of some of that money. I did get something, I think about 1 o'clock or so, I saw it today, that there's some more definitive stuff from NACO on what the monies can be used for, but I have not had the time. It was a pretty good-sized document, and also, I'm not sure all the things, but that one is one that, when I met with the South Carolina Association of Counties, that you can have $13 per hour premium pay, up to $13 per hour for premium pay for essential workers, which, you know, again, that's pretty broad when you say essential workers, because you had to have the courthouse open, you had to have everything, you know. I mean, there were people that had to be available for services at most any given time.
But that could be like, we could go with the $2 across the board with an additional bump just for law enforcement.
2%.
2%.
2% and
I would
then
be
a bump.
completely in favor of that. Just know that that's a stipend, that's a temporary stipend. That's not going to change the starting salary
Absolutely,
long-term.
absolutely. That is a temporary fix.
Yes.
Agreed.
I would-
Until we get a salary survey done
I would
across
be
the
in
board.
complete agreement with that.
If that would
got-
help some.
We got to be careful. This is not recurring money now. We don't want to put it into something and.
No. This is not a
That's right.
reoccurring, this is a temporary fix until we get a salary study done.
Well, I will tell you that I do believe a salary study probably, and again, we still need to do it. I'm afraid we're gonna have our feelings hurt.
We will,
Oh, ain't no question.
we will.
Ain't no
We
And
did
again,
it
if we-
at
if
my
we-
place of
but
employment and we
Across
did.
the board.
But we are being very non-responsive and I guess you could almost say two-faced, for lack of a better word. If we sit in up here and we're asking that our business and industries that we're bring in $17, $18 an hour, and we're sitting here paying $13 an hour.
Absolutely.
Now, I will say, one of the things that dearly concerns me about law enforcement is our investment into them. You can hire, and no disrespect to anybody that's a clerical staff person, but you can hire and train them in-house. But when how much does it cost probably to train an officer?
But it's taking us right now, 3 or 4 months just to get them in the police academy. Once you get them in the police academy, then you've got 8 weeks. Once you get them out of police academy, it's 3 to 4 months, depending on the individual, of field training. So if you count salary, you're looking at a year's salary
Takes a
of
year to turn
training
one around.
for an officer. And that didn't count the money that it costs to, I mean, we don't pay for the police academy, but the money that is paid for that type of training.
But till you look at what it takes to get one certified to feel comfortable with them being on the road, especially in today's time, stability of having a good law enforcement, I don't think anybody will question that if we poll the 40+ thousand citizens of Newberry County, one of the most important things is going to be safety and emergency services. Those were probably the 2 most important things that anybody will point to as far as what they want in their community and what they want with their tax dollars. I don't think that's even a question. Originally, I thought about doing the 1.5 and then doing $2,000 possibly, and then we determined where that essential population was, whether that's Public Works, whether that's clerk of court's office, whether that's treasurer's office, because all those people still had to be in their occupations to a certain extent. But again, I'll once we go through this overall and get all the overall feedback on this, then I'll have more of a determination of where I want to position myself. Mary, you got any questions? I know you're out there, and is anything else you want to ask or say?
Well, I just said a while ago about, what we do with this money. It's not reoccurring, so it's not gonna fix anything but for 2 years. So we got to be careful if we use it to give additional wages.
Well, I think that money is more of appreciation money and appreciation and, again, services rendered for unprecedented times.
So can you use it as like a bonus?
Well, you got to be careful how you word it
Right.
as bonus.
Yeah.
We can use it to enhance our people who have served the county during unprecedented times. I'll just leave it at that, and that way I don't tie it down to a term expressing what the money is being used for. Whether I don't want anybody to think we're using it as a pay raise. I don't want anybody. It can be used according to the law up to $13 an hour for people who were essential employees.
And that, Mr. Chairman, would cover some of the points made by Ben and Wesley about what was done during the pandemic, the response that law enforcement gave, and a stipend from the money the county is going to be provided, I think is a wonderful thing. I think we should pass that along to the law enforcement. And it's, Nick has also brought up, I think, a good idea. We give them a stipend. No, Mary, it's not recurring, but it's a appreciation for what they had to go through during the pandemic, and it gives us an opportunity. You mentioned $13 an hour. Our motor grader operators are making $13 an hour. I think starting law enforcement's right at $20 an hour, and that's probably not high enough either.
Right. I don't think it's that high because you have to do it on an 84-hour pay period, not a 40, not an 80. So it would come down based on that.
Well, it annoys me.
I was based on a 2,080-hour work
Yeah,
year.
see, they don't do that. Law enforcement's held to a different standard. They work an 84-hour pay cycle. So that wouldn't exactly be right.
It annoys me on the lower end of the county down when I ride around sometimes to see Lexington County, Richland County, and Irmo Police Department cars parked in people's yards. They need to be in Newberry County. They live here, they need to be working here. And apparently we're not compensating them enough to be here.
I totally agree with that. Well, they don't get paid enough.
When they started letting them, used to nobody let them bring their patrol cars home outside the county. And when they turned that to get people, that was the turning point. I can live in Lexington County, make $8,000 more a year and drive my patrol car home. And so that was a big change. And as Mr. Hip did a disclaimer, let me please do a disclaimer that mine is not that we don't have great county employees across the board, because we do. We have outstanding county employees. We're blessed beyond measure from the top to the bottom, and so that was never my intent either. So let me throw my disclaimer on the backside of that.
And I understand that it's a temporary fix if we were to give that, but that would give us time to do what the research across the board, what we need for everyone.
I think that's more than fair.
But then hopefully that would help the law enforcement. I mean, know that we're looking for them and we do care, but we're trying to get everybody up to speed and still give them something extra for what they have done. And hopefully next year we can do better for everyone.
I still get a lot of complaints from the city police department because they're not making as much as the county's making. And from what I'm understanding, you got city police officers switching over to county jobs. So they're complaining because they're not getting what the county officers are making. And I really don't want it to be a big issue with everybody, because the city needs just as much as the county does. But we don't need people switching back and forth.
Mr. Reed, I think it's been one to swap, but she wanted to swap anyway, I think.
Oh, that's right. There had been Chief Boland, is there still a moratorium on that for the most part, not swapping back and forth? They have pretty much a standing agreement not to do that, because if not,
Yeah.
it becomes,
It was one that she was looking for a job anyway.
law enforcement, when the money started changing so rapidly, law enforcement became the gypsy profession where people just, every time somebody offered more money, they just jumped ship and went somewhere else. And so that's why it became so very difficult to hire people. Linemen do the same thing. I know some linemen and they are,
Absolutely.
I know one lineman has had 3 different jobs in less than 2 years. And so,
We don't have that agreement, unfortunately.
Thing about the lineman, when he goes out on a call, he knows where that problem is.
That's right.
When a deputy goes out on a call, it's invaluable to have a knowledge base of saying, well, this is kind of fits the pattern of old Joe who's been doing this quite often, so the stability in law enforcement is a totally different can of worms than.
You don't know if somebody's gonna shoot you when you go out as law enforcement.
and let me say this before we move, and I know we could beat this to death, but I also think when we consider those bonuses or stipends or whatever word we need to use, and we can talk to legal staff about that, but that shouldn't be lost on our fire and rescue folks either.
Right.
If there's a way to help them, I think that should be done for them as well, just to say thank you, because they stood tall during this mess. Call volume didn't go down, it went up. And so.
I
we're
say to
blessed.
all first responders, I think that would cover everybody,
My hat's off to all of them.
because they were all on call 24/7 during the whole pandemic.
I think that would bear some discussion because I know we already do the 500, and so they're gonna get 1099 if we do any more than 100, but I think that bears discussion with them. No?
They get W-2.
Oh, they get W-2s, not 1099s? Okay, all right,
And
so,
that was
Well,
what-
that can be determined at a later date. You
Yes.
just need to kind of agree.
Yes.
I just wanna put that on the
What we
table.
determine later impacts what we approve in our budget.
Absolutely.
If we know we're doing something, our plan is to do something, then that can also impact what our budget.
If this council's committed to doing that, and I'm all on board with
That was also one of the questions that Karen and I have been sitting on, that South Carolina Association County and NACO Zoom calls. Those are questions that we've asked and have not gotten an answer yet.
All right, continuing with operating budget. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, one of my concerns came up as a result of last year's audit, and I did get a good answer to that. But last year's audit indicated a number of things. It showed a decrease in our net position, total net position. It showed a net decrease in capital assets. It showed a decrease in fund balance. And it showed a debt service increase, which all those things together would indicate a bad trend as far as finances. And so that was another reason I thought, well, let me delve into this a little deeper. And I think I've gotten an answer to my questions there. If anybody else needs an answer, maybe everybody else has already gotten an answer to those questions. But they were, again, decreasing net and decreasing revenues and increasing expenses. So that was what kind of also keyed me into looking into some other areas, and one of those happened to be, and I know this may be a hornet's nest for some people, but when we look at our animal control expenditures, and I'll let anybody jump in and explain this as they will and want to, but we had a budget of $65,000 in 2021, and now our budget this year's in 21-22, $75,000 for the spay and neuter program. Anybody wants to jump in on that, have at it. Otherwise, I got some information today that I could share.
I think it'd be wise for you to go ahead and share what you got.
It's my understanding that a lot of that expense is due to feral cats actually being brought to the shelter and go through the spay neuter program and then released back to the wild without an owner ever having the animal and showing ownership to the animal. And so the county's funding the entire spay neuter program, and then we take a feral animal that has no owner and then take it back out and release it. I'm sorry, but that just doesn't seem right to me. And I'm not,
Let me just, I just want to make something clear.
Okay.
I might not have made that. They actually don't bring them to the animal shelter. There is a company, it's an individual company. She actually goes out to the site where the cats are. They do a process to be able to trap them. They have to, feed them or something to entice them to the traps. She takes them to Palmetto, the animal place in Columbia, for the spay neuter. So they don't really come to the shelter, but yet we still pay for the
but we're paying
charges.
for it.
Yes, we do. And then once they are spayed, neutered, they are taken back to the location where they were. These persons don't claim ownership of these, they're just supposedly on their property.
And it's my understanding from several constituents who are not happy that our animal shelter doesn't take cats at all right now, that they have so many cats, they're not taking them at all.
I don't know, I
Probably
don't
so.
know that answer.
Cats have always been a issue.
Again, not mine, that's just,
Yeah.
why can't they take cats? And I'm
Well,
like,
we've had some calls, admin gets a lot of calls where they don't know where to call. Some people are upset for the trap and release program. They don't like that thought. There are some, I don't know if it's stipulations with the Humane Society that the animal shelter has. I don't know how that works, but I do know that there are issues that push them in this direction for them to do the trap and the release. But should we decide to limit, we can place a limit on how much money can be spent so far. We don't place that limit now.
Well-
Because in that program, you also have residents who bring their animals on those certain days to go to to be spayed or neutered. They pay a portion, the county pays a portion.
I think that's a great program.
But
When
as far
somebody
as-
owns an animal, takes responsibility for an animal, brings it in, offsets the cost of it, the county offsets it, that is a great program.
And the only other one that I'm aware of that the county pays wholly is if they have to pick up an animal or someone drops off an animal and doesn't claim ownership, then the shelter pays for that spay or neuter, and they're usually back for adoption, ready for adoption.
What happens if the county spays or neutered an animal, they're up for adoption and they aren't adopted?
They have a euthanasia program. I don't know what their percentage is on how long they keep one, or they may send them to another rescue. Leslie would have to be the one to give you more detail.
Okay, because it just, it seems like it would be kind of foolish to go through the expense of a spay neuter and then turn around and have an euthanasia.
That's a
They
waste of
don't
money.
normally, I think.
Unfortunately, that's a waste of
euthanasia is
money.
way it's very limited on what they do that for, although they're still able to do that. They're certified and registered through DHEC to be able to do it. But I'm sure it's not just off the cuff that they do that. They have specific reasons.
Yeah, because that's not an insignificant line item when we look at our budget. That's a lot of money in our budget. Doesn't affect the overall budget, but, or it has some effect.
That program has significantly reduced the number of feral cats and stuff, my understanding, since the inception of that program, has considerably reduced the number of cats, et cetera, that were out there. And I would hate to see us go back in the same direction we were, because it was the numbers when we started, and we actually had reports from animal shelter that kept track of the reduction of numbers when the inception of this program started for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years. We actually ran numbers, maybe longer, and I'm sure they may still have numbers, but
I'm gonna ask,
that number of feral cats that were actually being brought into the shelter significantly reduced, even, you know, with dogs, because there are a lot of dogs running around in communities that are intact, that are having puppies, and then they getting called to come out and get the puppies, and a whole litter of puppies, et cetera. So I know I was not overly excited about that initial program, but as I saw the results of it unfold, and it has cut significantly into our cat and dog problem, I don't have any answers for the numbers, but I do have answers that I know that we had a track record that it was significantly reducing our numbers.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if it's reducing it, that would indicate that we've got fewer out there that need to be spayed and neutered, and yet, when you look at our budget, it seems to be going up.
Well, the thing of it is,
Costs increased as well. The cost for Palmetto Lifeline, the Columbia, where they do the spay neuter, their cost has increased as well.
that's what I was going to say. Palmetto Lifeline is the one that we contract with to do it, and one of the very few. I don't know what their contracted price is now, but we have to pay X number of dollars for every animal that Palmetto Lifeline actually services for us. And their cost is not remaining stagnant, unfortunately.
we'll try to get you some numbers on that and send them to you before next week.
Anything else?
Under our facilities management, we're showing almost more than double our budget from our previous year's budget in 2021 under contracted maintenance. If anybody else on council wants to explain that, I got an explanation today, but if anybody else understands that, I don't want to take all the time doing all the talking.
Repeat what you said again, please.
The contracted maintenance under our facilities management cost center shows more than double, almost $100,000 increase. Anybody else wants to explain that? I did get an explanation today.
Go for it. Well, let me back up. One thing you mentioned a while ago about the audit and the amount of deficit that had occurred, that was the year that we were able to locate Samsung here. That $3 million, I think we contributed to Samsung to help secure them coming here, which has been a catalyst for probably a good bit of other economic development. So again, I think that was $3 million well spent from the standpoint of when you look at the reduction there in capital.
That's correct. There were several other differences, but I understand that was a major contributor, was the $3 million offering to Samsung.
So just FYI on that.
Right.
The county's not in a doom and demise type
Yeah, I didn't want,
scenario.
if you just looked at the audit report, your trend would not be a positive trend.
But I think we're still at almost 6.5 months of reserve fund. We are much, much better than most counties. So I think our future is very, very bright. All right, you wanted to explain the $100,000?
The contracted maintenance, as I understand, several issues dealing with age deterioration of buildings and the contracted maintenance. Debbie, you want to refresh everybody on what you and I talked about today?
Primary for contracted services pertaining to building and equipment maintenance, HVAC, landscape and janitorial, sprinkler system, elevator, and alarm system. And most of you know that, we used to have a loan maintenance person in-house, and we've since contracted that out, as well as HVAC. And we're gonna have to do some sprinkler system maintenance on some of the heads at the courthouse and that kind of stuff. But that's the majority.
And it was also my understanding that the lack of inmate labor has contributed to that going up as well.
Yes. And, you know, we used to contract with disabilities to do several of the buildings, but now has not started back yet.
I understand they only let the outside group go, is that right?
They've actually started some of their cleaning, but very minimal. They're not ready to put them back in force totally.
I had one final area that I had a question about that I wanted addressed is under the Planning and Zoning Department, consulting and tech fees. 2021 budget had $18,000 in that. The requested for this year was $160,000. The actual approved was $60,000, which of course at 3 times previously, if anybody else wants to explain that.
Now, I know some of that probably has to do with the stipend that we given to the incentive program for the BZA and
Part of it, yes,
Not
sir.
in that line item.
But overall,
I think, as I understand it, this is where we were contracting a service to come in and do a review of, and posting of properties, that we were contracting that,
Now, that was
that's
in
delinquent tax.
okay,
This is,
the consulting and technical fees review under zoning, then what was that? Maybe
That was the new subdivision regs. It's in our ordinance, it says we have to have an engineer to overview the new subdivisions. We haven't had one of those since Plantation Point. So they would look at the permitting and so forth for Stewart Landing and then probably 773. And we have not used one up until the Stewart.
So, will we need one for this new development on 773?
Probably so. I
And
know
that,
that.
and that's where that funding will be going to?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it
Yes.
to cover that?
It would be Stewart Landing and 773.
And this money was just a marker, so should we get more? May not be a big enough marker.
There's another development on, off of CL Lane as well.
Yeah. But they haven't come before council. Yeah, yes.
That's why I
ex-
said this is just a marker,
And-
so if you get more, it may not be enough funds for that. It's going to depend.
Most of
Small
the
price to
sub-
pay.
Yeah, most of the subdivisions in the past have been sold by the landowners. This really hadn't had a firm to come in and take charge of any of that.
Slough River Estates, I also got, they're putting in 57 homes.
Wow.
They just got that message today.
Again, that's a blessing. Again, I feel like that's a small price to pay for
Yeah,
that.
we need the homes.
That's
I
right,
mean,
desperately.
But, just found that out before I left work.
That's in Newberry County.
Yep.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, that's the only areas that I'd identified that I had specific questions about, and going back to the, of course, the cost of living increase. So that's all
I
I
want to go
had.
through and just talk about things that were pretty significant increase. School resource officers were there, but that's 3 new ones, I think. Am I correct?
Yes.
4 new ones?
We fired 2, and we have 2 more.
And, yeah, money out. No, in that, they only do salaries and fringe. They do not pay for equipment, training, or any of that other stuff. That's why the 2 cars for this year is in the 60,000 to take care of equipment and cars.
One question I have on that figure, because
Mr. Adams and the school district made some kind of agreement over something else to help pay for that over a certain amount of time?
It's fee in lieu ofs, and it'll take a while to get those back.
But
It
there
hasn't-
was
it
an
hasn't started
agreement
yet.
made
That's right.
between the
That's
school
correct.
district to try to reimburse for equipment for that
It's
over
just-
a time period. It wasn't gonna
Just,
be a
no
year.
quick, and it hasn't started yet.
Okay.
It was from the Greenwood one, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, from the Greenwood Industrial Park?
It's a new fee in lieu.
Yes.
Yeah, but it has not started yet. Don and I were talking about that
Is that the
earlier.
new plant that's behind the old food line?
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to fix it when it's charged to make sure school
Doesn't get there.
doesn't get any of that money.
Yes.
Comes straight to the county.
But that's just a small,
A very small fee in lieu.
It'll take a lot of years to get that 120,000 back.
In fact, you'll need more before you get that back.
Yes, sir. But as I say, we're here to help. If you have any questions, Karen and I are more than willing to talk one-on-one or as a group. We just want to make it easiest for y'all to make those decisions.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. I think a lot of the stuff that was in the summary, because like here on the facilities management, it was said that additional funds are needed in contracted maintenance, 83,000 utilities, 15,000 capital repairs, 30,000 contracted in services, 5,300. So I think a lot of the planning and zoning professional services increased by 41,750. Newberry County has contracted with a company to act as the county's, this is on page 9 of our budget meeting that we're given, to act as the county's engineer to review plans for any new housing subdivision. Newberry County is now paying a stipend to the Joint Planning Commission and BZA board members for their attendance at meetings. That additional cost is $13,320. And we were the laughingstock and the joke for a while with that, because we would have the BZA meetings and we would not have quorum. So the stipend there has enhanced the opportunity, because we were getting stagnated and backed up because we were not having attendance at that. So I think that's part of the explanation as to why. So anyway, with all that being said, did anybody find anything in here that was unneeded, unnecessary, or extra spending that needs to be taken out?
The only thing, again, that I would like looked at is this spay neuter. I mean, like I said, that's a good bit. I don't know how that needs to be managed. Maybe it needs to be adjusted, price adjusted, cost adjusted. $75,000. Good bit of money to spay neuter animals that you don't even, you know.
There's a price to pay for cutting things out.
We don't even, you know, they can't even claim an owner.
You don't want me to speak on what to do with a feral cat?
No, you don't want to
Please
either.
do not. Please
I
do
take it to
not.
the shelter myself.
That would not end well for anybody in this building.
I would take them to the shelter.
All right, community service. Well, Mary, I keep forgetting. You good with what we've talked about?
I'm good, I'm good.
Okay, I
I'm
don't
good.
mean to.
Can I just say one more thing about
Yes.
the feral cat things? I just want, it's $75,000 budgeted, but we also get about $17,000 in revenues.
That's the portion that the owner pays. We pay the full charge to Palmetto, but the revenue.
So it's 58,000 instead of 70.
Yes.
Okay.
At this point.
And I just thought
Little
about
more.
that when we
At
were
this point,
talking
that's
about
what
60, whatever.
They have a spay neuter that comes every week and picks up whatever limit that they can take that time.
And they also are funded with a lot of volunteers.
Yes.
And it's a waiting list. I mean, you just can't call and say, hey, I need to have
With
my,
the exception of the feral part.
Except for the feral
That's
cats,
totally
yeah.
separate from Palmetto's pickup.
Yeah,
I'll
that
get
feral
some
part's the
numbers.
part that,
we'll get you some numbers.
Yeah.
All right, anything on the general operating? Community service levy budget. Anybody got anything to speak to that one? Debt service levy. Capital budget and fund balance. Public comments.
I think Ben Chapman was the only one.
I did, that was just in case I need to say something, I will. I appreciate y'all listening to us and taking that into consideration. I appreciate anything that you to do for us, and as well as the other counties for us.
Thank you, and thanks for all you and all the first responders do to make this county a much, much better place. Being in real estate, that's one of the first things I'll be asked a lot of times, what's the safety like in your county? And I can proudly say I'm very proud of how safe our county is, and city and all. I know there was a guy from Greenwood at one time who was talking about, he says, man, he said, when I come over here, I see people walking the street late in the afternoons around town. And he said, y'all aren't scared to do that? And I said, no, I said, absolutely not. So, folks, we got a lot to be thankful for when it comes to our safety and security. Questions, comments from council members? Mary, I'll start off with you so that I don't omit you.
Don't forget me.
Yes.
Yeah, I think basically everything that I had questions about actually had been answered through the staff, and I appreciate Debbie and Karen for being there, because they know what these charges are and how they've increased or decreased or what's going on, and they've always been able to help. So thank you for that, and I've had all my questions answered.
Okay, Reverend Johnny Maxgurry, my hero. Any comments?
Yeah, we just wanna, I get very displeased when you wanna cut people out the bus. I know we have to sometime, but it really bothers me personally. Every department, if possible, the 2% raise needs to go to all of them. Or some type of adjustment. To walk by Public Works, our landfill, and say they don't get a raise. Or we walk by any office in Newberry County that's working, they deserve some type of incentive. Let them know we appreciate their work, hard work. After hours, I know they put in, law enforcement, and law enforcement, we often talk about how many law enforcement kill a year. But we forget to share with you how many get killed a year, law enforcement. They're getting shot and scarred just like other people are. And every day they get in their car, we never know they're gonna get back home or not. So we need to look out for them as possible. And every department deserves something if possible. Thank you.
Mr. Reader?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially since it was no cost of living raise last year. Yeah, we need to show them our appreciation for the job that they do on a daily basis. So if we can give them a little more, give each department a little more, I think they would appreciate the job that they do every day.
Mr. Johnson?
I couldn't agree more. I think we've reached a great compromise, which is what good teams do, is you reach a compromise. Just because we have spirited discussion doesn't mean we can't come to a great conclusion. And so I think being able to look at the COVID money and saying, hey, you did extra during COVID, so we're gonna give you a little extra because you did extra in COVID is gonna be a great way to look at it. So what a blessing, and I appreciate it.
Mr. Hill?
I appreciate all council members' indulgence to me whenever I ask for having an additional work session. I appreciate it because I had some things that I felt like needed to be discussed openly with all council, and I didn't want to wait until third reading when we're sitting here ready to take a vote, and then we had the spirited discussion that we had tonight. And I didn't think that would be as good. So I appreciate everybody's indulgence, really, and I've gotten my questions answered, a combination today, tonight, and the negotiated, as you said, resolution. I think it's going to be good if we give everybody 2%, if we also have some additional funds that we can give a stipend to law enforcement and first responders for what they did during the pandemic. I think we all win, and thank you.
I agree completely, and you and I think both learned a lesson that we'll do this much earlier next year.
Absolutely.
Nick?
I appreciate that we came up with a compromise. I think all of our county employees deserve much more than we can afford to give them, because they work hard for us, and we appreciate everything that they do. I totally hope that we can give a stipend or whatever you want to call it. I will not call it a
Whatever the
bonus.
magic word is.
Because I do want to retain who we got, because we got the best. And maybe in the future, we can do even better. Les, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm glad the council can work it. I don't like heated discussions, but sometimes it's what's got to happen for an outcome like this to take place. And I appreciate everyone.
And
Thank you.
staff is here to make any amendments. If you want us to draft them, just let us know.
Well, one of the things that I do want to see, can we go ahead and address, and whether we address it in the budget or whether we address it out of contingency, outside of the budget, we've got to do something with Public Works for them to be able to get people. We don't need to be putting in budget $250,000 motor graders, $60,000, $70,000 trucks, and having inadequate people operating them because we don't have a competitive pay scale. And we need to adjust that one probably immediately. I mean, I'm good with us we've got a decent reserve fund. We probably, to make a decent decision, in my opinion, we need to probably do a little more studying on what that number should be versus sitting here tonight and putting it in the budget. Can we properly do it that way, Debbie, once we study a little bit and then take out a contingency to get that? I say a one-time adjustment. It would definitely be a recurring cost, folks, but there again, I don't think any of us up here want to spend that kind of money on equipment and then have somebody that really, for lack of a better word, don't give a rip operating it. Hear it start rattling, see the wheels start shaking, and then you end up with a 10, 12, maybe even if you talk about an engine, a $30,000, $40,000 diesel engine replacement. So I think we need to potentially look at that. I just don't know that we can sit here tonight in good faith and come up with a number without having a little bit of a study done. So I don't know how y'all want to do that. Debbie?
Just some guidance, if you just know what you want to do or what you want a starting pay. Association of Counties has a book that they put out every year that has all the counties and their job descriptions.
Well, I just
So we can
discovered
look
that this past week, I think, how much of a discrepancy we have from where we need to be, maybe 2 weeks. It's just been a short period of time.
Yeah.
But I just think we, in all good stewardship, we need to have decent employees. When I say decent employees, I don't mean that we don't have current ones, but we've lost obviously several because we wouldn't have 3 openings in one department of only 15 people if we were in somewhat of a competitive price band or salary band or whatever you want to call it. Now, it goes back to what I think has been echoed up and down this table on a couple of occasions tonight. We probably need to do a study and see, and I will say that 2% will only help us not getting our feelings hurt quite as much, because it's still going to, I think, going to hurt. Our feelings are going to
I don't
be
think there's no question.
hurt, and we may not be able to make it up in a period of time. I think the last time we had an Archer study was back in 95,
A long time ago.
6, 7.
And it took a couple years for that to,
Yes, and again, I think we had to implement over a couple-year period to get that implemented.
it did.
And obviously, we have kind of let some things slip again. I know I sit here and I'm proud to say that over the past 14 years, I don't think our tax millage has increased. Now, through reassessment, et cetera, things have gone up some, but you can only continue to operate and keep good people and provide good services for a period of time to where you got to pay attention to what's happening with your county and your employees. I mean, again, look back here at the back, and we got some people been here 30, 45 years, 70 years.
I don't believe I'd like that.
There might be a fight afterwards.
Oh, her mother worked here,
It
was
just
carried.
rolls off, it just rolls off.
Her mother worked here, and she was carried in her womb. That's what I'm referring to. But anyway, on a serious note, folks, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of reassessment to do. When I say reassessment, I'm not talking about it from the assessor's office. I'm talking about from the standpoint of our gaps and where we have been, where we need to be, what we need to be looking at. Then we got to figure out where in the heck we're going to get it and what kind of pace we can go at doing it. But we cannot allow quality people to escape. I will say this again, and other than attorneys and all saying that They can't find enough time to get into the courthouse and the clerk. They do say that we've got, huh? Yeah, but they do say that we've got the nicest staff, and I hear that many times over, that we've got some of the nicest people working in our planning and zoning, in our assessor's office. I mean, and again, that's the ones I hear from on the real estate side of things. And it does make me proud to hear them say that we got good people. But the only way you go keep good people is to keep them compensated. And again, I know, Les, you said before, when we're looking at economic development, we don't want to be bringing in companies with $13 and $14 hour salaries. We want $18 hour salaries. And then when we look at ours and we see we're paying 13, that's somewhat hypocritical that we are. Again, don't get me wrong. It's on a scale of what is competitive. You know, some jobs, if you're a machine tool person, obviously you're going to have a higher rate than probably somebody that's unskilled labor. But there again, we've got to be paying very close attention to what we are paying our people so that we maintain stability and good quality of employees. Because I say maintain, that is a very intentionally selected word, because we do have good ones and I want to maintain what we have. So, and I think that was echoed pretty much up and down through here. But we are blessed with good people, but we sure as heck don't want to, on our end of it, be negligent and let things start falling apart, quality-wise. Now, did I run my mouth? Anybody else got anything they want to say?
No.
Debbie?
Yes. One more last thing. We have finally done the submission to review to get the first batch of money. Hopefully we'll know in 4 days.
American Recovery.
American Recovery.
Okay, great, thank y'all. Amongst the budget, y'all been able to do that too. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for getting the signatures.
Yeah.
It was submitted this morning.
The one other thing that we know we will have an amendment for third reading, Theo DeBose met with us last week. The money that is in the line item of the economic development budget for Mid-Carolina Commerce Park fee and lieu, that will come out as expenditure and revenue because it is going to be paid strictly from the treasurer's office. It will not be part of general operating budget. So our total budget will come down by that $430,000.
Wonderful. Okay, any other comments, folks? Not speaking of every hold your peace, but we're fixing to get out of here.
You want to thank our 2 county administrators.
I love it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.